thank you for joining me today for the Indigenous Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today I have Bill Stimmel with me. He is from the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, and he'll be sharing with us some of their programming and what they have to offer for Native American artisans and entrepreneurs. So thank you for being with us, Bill.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be a part of this.
So to get started, could I just have you introduce yourself a little bit more, who you are, and what do you do at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center?
Sure. So my name is Bill Stimmel, and I'm the Entrepreneurial Director at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. I'm fairly new in the role. I've been with IPCC for a little over 3 months now. I kind of come from a background of hospitality and food retail, and there was just a natural connection there that speaks to what we're looking to do with the Entrepreneur Complex. The complex is really going to be focused on food-related entrepreneurs, so growers, producers, entrepreneurs that are making value-added products. It could be a salsa or a fresh jam or anything like that. And we broke ground back in early May on the new Entrepreneur Complex. It's going to be a 7,500 square foot building. That's phase one, that will contain a full commercial kitchen. It'll also have a demonstration or test kitchen, and it'll have some areas in the building for general business services. We're hoping that it'll be open in late spring of 2024. So, maybe about 10 months or so from now. And we're looking at potential additional phases to add more cold storage and maybe an expanded business service center in 2025.
That's exciting. And you guys are located on 12th Street in Albuquerque, correct?
We are. So, the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center campus itself is located on nearly 80 acres of land. It's situated where the old Albuquerque Indian School was for over 100 years. And we are just north of the intersection of 12th Street and Interstate 40. And really, the Cultural Center, the idea for this was planted by the tribal councils of the 19 New Mexico Pueblo Communities, the 19 Pueblos District. And it started as a concept back in 1976. So we've grown by leaps and bounds, and these days it serves as a critical gathering place where Pueblo culture is really celebrated through a variety of cultural experiences. We have a world-class museum celebrating Pueblo culture here on campus. We have 2 restaurants. We have a wonderful gift shop. We have a convenience store, gas station. We have an incredible garden that I'll talk more about a little bit later. And then we have a commercial enterprise too, where we are building and leasing out land, including a couple of hotels and some additional restaurants. And our next phase, in late 2024, La Montanita, their co-op that's located on Rio Grande Boulevard, is going to move to be here on campus. So it's a really exciting place.
So a lot of businesses on the campus are Native owned, correct?
They are. So a couple of examples of that would be one of our first commercial tenants, Laguna Burger, which are the iconic burgers from the Laguna Pueblo. We have another wonderful newer vegan restaurant, Itality, and the owner of Itality is from the Jemez Pueblo. So, we do have a mix of native and non-native businesses here on campus, but we have some wonderful, wonderful native businesses that everyone has access to.
So how did this next phase of building the entrepreneurial center and the commercial kitchen, all of that, how did that come about? And kind of what was the process in determining that as something that was needed?
Well, that's a great question. And the seeds for this project were really planted almost 5 years ago. Back in 2018, that was a concept that was discussed internally. And initially, it was going to be an entrepreneur complex that focused on all entrepreneurs. It wasn't really going to have a food focus necessarily. And the project gained a little bit of traction in 2019. And then right before we were going to start moving forward with the project, COVID happened in the spring of 2020. And that put a pause to the project. And it might have been, there was a silver lining to that because during COVID, when we saw national food systems breaking down and, some of the other things that, really kind of got exposed with food systems, we realized that local food systems didn't break down. And there was a new spotlight and emphasis on how important local food systems are. And really, we started to pivot and just started to discuss with so many other organizations in the state, even all the way up to the governor's office, just how much of a need there is in New Mexico to strengthen those food systems, how there are so many potential, growers and entrepreneurs who don't have access to commercial kitchen space, who don't have access to cold storage for their fresh produce or cold transportation. So, through all of that in 2020, in 2021, this new concept emerged and it really became more focused and more strategic, looking at an entrepreneur space that is mostly focused on native and non-native food entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there seems to be a pretty big push for that in other parts of the state as well. I just spoke with the San Juan Harvest Food Hub, and they have similar aspirations to serve that part of the state, which I think it's great that they'll probably end up serving more like Northwest New Mexico, Navajo Nation, and then for you guys to be here serving more central New Mexico and then the Pueblos. It's awesome that we'll have those two resources in New Mexico once you all break ground and everything's built. I'm wondering what current offerings do you have for entrepreneurs? I know IPCC serves artisans, but then also you guys are now starting to serve more agricultural entrepreneurs. So what current resources and programs do you have? And then how are you going to expand once this location and building is built?
Yeah, so the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center overall, we've got several existing resources for Native entrepreneurs and natives in general. We have educational resources. We have traditional teachings, summer camps. In fact, this week we're about midway through our 10 to 13-year-old aged summer camp, where they're out in the garden and they're learning some agricultural techniques. They're learning more about Pueblo culture and history. We offer school tours. We have a Pueblo book club that meets once a month online. We have Indigenous wisdom curriculum projects where we're working with other local schools to really have people learn more about the 19 Pueblos. We have special collections, research library and archives, which is an incredible resource. It's really dedicated to promoting the history and culture of Pueblo people. We have artisan resources now. We have an annual, Native American student art show, which is really exciting. We have an artist circle in the museum. So we have other programs and events, of course, our cultural dance program. We have daily artists selling their wares here on campus. So we've got a lot of resources overall at IPCC, but the Entrepreneur Complex, it's an interesting challenge because the building won't be up until next spring. But we do have some programming now that we've been able to initiate. One is we have a series of beginner farmer trainings. We've partnered with the Indigenous Food Hub in Corrales, New Mexico, and so we're alternating locations every third Saturday we'll either have a training in Corrales, or we'll have it here on campus at IPCC in the Resilience Garden. And those will run through the end of August. So it's been really great to be able to start out in April talking about planting techniques, and then we've kind of moved into cultivating, and now we're getting into harvesting, which is really exciting for those beginner farmers. And we've also hosted some producer forums, having some existing farmers and potential future farmers and entrepreneurs who have had access to other organizations in the state to ask questions, everything from what capital opportunities are out there for them, to what partners are out there to learn more about food safety and whatnot. So, and we'll be expanding those offerings over the coming months for the Entrepreneur Complex. But we're really excited about what we're going to be able to offer when the complex is open.
You mentioned a few partnerships that you have, one with the Indigenous Food Hub, which I've actually never heard of. So I'm curious to look into them a little bit more. But what are some other key partnerships that you have and then that you see as important going forward in further developing this like Indigenous entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout the state?
There are a lot of organizations throughout the state that are all connected in their own way with trying to improve local food systems in New Mexico. And just off the top of my head, a couple that come to mind, there's an organization called the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. They're based out of Santa Fe. And we work pretty closely with them in a few different ways. They've partnered with the state to initiate a program that's called New Mexico Grown. And the New Mexico Grown program essentially does a really good job of connecting existing farmers and growers with institutional sources for their produce. So whether that be schools or senior centers or other institutional areas around the state, it's a really great program to get healthier food, out there on plates of kids and seniors around New Mexico. And the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association also has a really robust food safety program. So they actually will go around and they'll work with the farmers on site to get them up to a level of food safety, and then add them to an approved supplier list with New Mexico Grown. So they're a great partner for us. Other partners, there are other organizations that are operating, food hub or commercial kitchen type of businesses. The South Valley Economic Development Center here in Albuquerque, they've been a tremendous resource for us, just sharing ideas. And they've been doing great work for a number of years there. You mentioned Jacqueline Montoya at San Juan College with their Harvest Food Hub. I also visited Jacqueline a little over a month ago, and it was great to see what they're doing in that part of the state. And there's a lot of agriculture in the northwest part of the state. But she's also been a good resource, and we're kind of trading ideas in terms of how we can make our operations better. But there are just so many other organizations around New Mexico that are just really doing great work.
I see a lot of movement. I mentioned this before, around agriculture and local agriculture and supporting farmers. I think when people think of like starting a business or entrepreneurship, their first thought isn't necessarily agriculture or food businesses, but I do think that's actually huge and important here in New Mexico. And like you also mentioned from COVID-19, just that importance of creating a local food source and food system. What is your vision, I guess I'd say, for this entrepreneurial complex and just for agricultural entrepreneurship in general in the state?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we want to do is we want to contribute and really be a positive force to get more people involved in agriculture and farming in New Mexico, especially native farmers. There's almost 25,000 farms throughout the state of New Mexico, which is a surprising number for people who aren't involved in agriculture in New Mexico. And about a quarter of those farms are Native American owned. So, one of the things that we want to be able to do is try to, get some of those farms to a point where they feel really comfortable with how the business side of the farm works, how they can either look at improving food sovereignty on the Pueblos and how they can provide food to, other homes or businesses on the Pueblos, and or how they can look at something that's economically viable to be able to take their product to market. And to be able to do that, they need to have certain support services. And that's where the entrepreneur complex, I think, is going to be critically important for them, because we're going to be able to offer a place to clean and aggregate produce, which is really the first step. And then the second step, we're going to be able to offer cold storage for those growers. So if they're trying to get their product out to market and they need to stage it somewhere for a day or two, they need to have refrigeration. We're going to be able to offer refrigerated transportation also, which we're already involved with now, to be able to get fresh produce from their farms to our location, which, it's pretty hot out there today, and it's going to be incredibly warm the next couple of weeks. So, to have that ability just makes it a lot easier for those growers to get product to market. And then there are other growers that they're going to bring their product to us, but they also want to transform it. It's a value added piece. They want to process the produce. So, whether it's making a fresh salsa or a fresh jam, or whether it's maybe looking at, cutting melons, and selling them to local markets or whatnot. We're going to be able to offer all of that. We're also going to have, dry storage and equipment storage for those growers here on site. And then we're also going to offer general business, center amenities. I was a business owner myself for 9 years. And early on, I like to tell people that I knew what to do, but I didn't know what not to do. And, what mistakes to avoid and what pitfalls to kind of steer clear of. I didn't know how to create an invoice, the first time I needed to do that. So, just general business services to kind of elevate the level of comfort that those growers and entrepreneurs have in every way is what we're really excited about doing here.
So how can, once the complex is up, and even now, how can an interested agricultural entrepreneur farmer connect with your current programming, or in the future connect with the entrepreneurial complex?
Yeah, I think there's two really good ways now. One, and I'll just throw my email address out there. You can, reach me directly. And my email address is bstimmel, so it's BSTIMMEL at indianpueblo.org. Or you can also visit our website, which is indianpueblo.org. And there is a ton of programming information on our website about everything that the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center does. But we're also going to be loading future information for what we'll be doing with the Entrepreneur Complex.
So what are some of the current impacts that you've seen? I know you've only been with IPCC for a short time, but I'm just wondering if there's some success stories and ways that you have seen the how IPCC has benefited Native American entrepreneurs. So if you have any success stories that you're aware of, I'm wondering if you could share that with us. And then you've already kind of shared how you hope the complex will help in the future, but I'm wondering what current success stories might be out there.
Well, a year from now, I'm going to have a whole lot of success stories, hopefully, that I'll share with you. But I think one right now that we're really, proud of and really happy to be a part of is there is a grower on the San Felipe Pueblo, and his company is Black Mesa Farms. And we've been working with him actually for about a year, even as far back as last summer. He was looking for a place to aggregate produce. And even though we don't have our complex open yet, we did have some space here on campus for him to be able to use to clean and essentially bag produce for distribution. And we're taking it one step further this year. And we actually just started yesterday. And this is a program that is going to be running through the end of October. But I mentioned earlier that we have a refrigerated van. So Black Mesa Farms is working with, and I mentioned earlier, the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association, and they have a program that enables Black Mesa to, again, aggregate and clean produce and then distribute it out to 3 locations. One is the Canyoncito Navajo Reservation in Tehajali, and then 2 of our 19 pueblos, both Laguna and Isleta. So all 3 of those locations have senior centers on site. And we're actually using our refrigerated van to pick up that produce and deliver out to the senior centers. And so it's been a huge success for Black Mesa Farms because it's really economically viable. And it's also a huge success story, just in terms of the mission of what we're hoping to do. And that is to help in getting fresh produce out to senior centers and schools. So we're really, really proud of that relationship we have with Black Mesa Farms. And I think that's just one example of what will eventually be many that we'll be able to share.
So do you think your capacity for supporting people like Black Mesa Farms will increase after the complex has been built?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the types of services that we'll offer, being able to fully aggregate and store your produce here on site will be available for so many of those growers, of course, Black Mesa, but many others that we're already talking to, just trying to plant those seeds for next summer.
And this programming in the facility will be accessible to Native Americans, but also non-natives, correct?
Yes, I mean, obviously, we're owned by the 19 Pueblos, and we, we want to serve the 19 Pueblos as we are, but it will be available to both Native and non-Native entrepreneurs.
How do you guys go about maybe identifying entrepreneurs who might want to engage with your programming? Is it kind of just like people self-identify? Do you have recruiting? How do you get people aware of your services and wanting to work with you?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that, we had already some, individuals and businesses identified that, we wanted to reach out to. But it's also, getting out there in the field and trying to identify potential farmers, growers, entrepreneurs. Most of the 19 Pueblos have an individual that, really is the connection for agriculture-based programs on the Pueblo. One example of that is a little over a month ago, the Acoma Pueblo hosted an Acoma Farm Day. And so I went out there and actually set up as an educational vendor to be able to connect with those growers on the Pueblo. And also just trying to, again, plant those seeds and let them know what we're doing and what services we do have available now, and then, how that's going to expand exponentially next year.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely make sure the liaisons are aware of the complex and of your services. That way we can also help refer people to you as we meet with entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. Because I do think it's a great resource and definitely needed based on the discovery we've been doing through our program. So
I appreciate that, and I think as well as anyone, that the outreach is part of the challenge, and the more partners we can have in getting that outreach out there, it's just going to make it even more successful.
Definitely. Um, so do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to share while we're on here about the program, or any other success stories, before we wrap things up?
Yeah, and I think, one other thing I would mention is, for example, we're working with a different entrepreneur who is also in the San Felipe Pueblo. But because, when I talked about, all the different types of businesses that are under our umbrella at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center, we have opportunities ourselves and also with our, business partners to be able to promote value added products, on the retail or restaurant side. So we have someone who bakes cookies, and they're really fabulous, and we carry them in one of our retail stores. And so, for us, we can be an outlet for some of these entrepreneurs. And of course, with La Montanita, with the co-op grocery store coming online late next year, they're going to be a tremendous outlet to be able to potentially sell fresh produce, retail in their store. And one last piece that I didn't really mention is part of the entrepreneur complex is our existing resilience garden. And this is the first year that we actually have worked with our restaurant, the Indian Pueblo Kitchen, to plant items that they're going to feature on their menu this summer. And we're actually starting to harvest next week. So it's a really exciting time for us. But we'll be able to show that farm to table model, we're doing it, right? So, we can set the tone and be a leader, and have that example of how that could possibly work for other future entrepreneurs, specifically farmers and growers that want to emulate that farm to table concept with other restaurants. So it's really multifaceted, what we're doing, and we're just so excited to be able to offer this, what we're doing now and in the future.
Yeah, wouldn't it? I just think, in an ideal situation, it would just be so awesome, to just see that from the growers, then they sell to the restaurants, and then the restaurants sell to the people or to another store, and just, creating that really localized economy, and helping to keep that wealth in New Mexico, generate that wealth. I think that's our goal, with our program, to kind of help support those types of efforts. And I think a lot of our partners have the similar hope and dream for New Mexico.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that there's so much opportunity here, and I think organizations like yours and what we're hoping to do, are just going to promote that in ways that are incredibly important.
Well, thank you so much. I definitely would like to have you on here again, to maybe promote, whenever you're opening the Entrepreneurial Complex in the spring of 2024, and then afterwards to get some more success stories. I'd love to have, some of the people who have worked with you guys on this podcast as well, just to share their stories, and then from their perspective, how IPCC was able to help them. So we'll definitely be in touch and hopefully have some more stories related to IPCC here on this podcast.
I would love that, and I appreciate all of the great work that you're doing. And if there's anything I can do in the interim, please let me know.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, Cecilia.